Hello, hello, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of HR at the Table. I am Liv Carter. I'm going to be your host for today's HR at the Table interview. And for those of you that have never attended HR at the Table, let me tell you something. This is an event that brings me so much joy and has quite a bit of followers here. Many of you have probably joined us for another episode before, but HR at the Table is all about bringing thought leaders and HR professionals, people management leaders to the seat. And what we do is we host an interview-like event, kind of like a podcast, but we've got a few slides to keep us on track. Now, before we jump into our season 4 premiere, so episode 1 of season 4 of HR at the Table, and before we introduce our amazing speaker here, I want to cover a few housekeeping items. So, and that'll kind of help as people continue to join in today. First of all, I do want to give a shout out and a thank you to our sponsors of today's HR at the Table episode. That would be 15.5. 15.5 is the holistic system of action for HR leaders to drive change and outcomes. They focus on improving manager effectiveness, reducing turnover, increasing performance and engagement. They really are that all-in-one HR solution. So thank you 15.5 for sponsoring today's episode. And those of you that are interested in learning more, we'll have contact information at the end of today's event. Additionally, other fun housekeeping items. The question I get right away as soon as I start the webinar, is today's episode being recorded? The answer is yes. We record all of our webinars. Yes, it is. We want this to be educational and a resource that you can refer back to, but you can also pass along to your colleagues and coworkers. So yes, it'll be recorded and you'll receive that recording shortly after today's live event via email. Additionally, we are so excited to continue offering SHRM and HRCI credit for HR at the Table webinar episodes. So since you all are here today, you'll get that code. It's actually on the last slide of our slide deck, so you'll get that. But then if you are like, man, I need a few more codes, or I need to, boost my HRCI credits, we give credit to all of our HR at the Table episodes. So you can actually go to our website, verifiedfirst.com. HR at the Table is under our resources tab, and you can watch previous HR at the Table web episodes and get that credit. So think of that as your resource to, that recertification that you all have worked really hard for. So those are kind of the major housekeeping items. The last one, and then we're gonna jump into it with our speaker here. Ask questions. We love questions. We've got a great speaker here who has given the green light on questions. She's ready. We want this event to bring, yeah, she's ready, I love it. We want this event to be valuable to you. So we want this next hour, right, 55 minutes to speak to how we can best support you and make the most of our time here with our speaker. So with that, I'm going to jump into it. Today we're going to be discussing embracing conflict to build stronger teams. I am so excited for this topic. We haven't had a HR at the Table episode on this, so I'm going to be rewatching today's episode. I already know, and since I won't be taking notes as host, but hope you all get something out of it. And with that, I would love to introduce our speaker today. We have Dawn Stone here. She is CEO of the Conflict Chick. Dawn, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Liv. Thank you, Verified First, and the entire family for bringing me here. I'm elated to be in the space, and I love conflict. I promise you it's a great thing.
And I'm sure by the end of today's episode, everyone will love conflict, right?
Absolutely. It's the birthplace, like we were saying, it's the birthplace of innovation and creativity. So it's really the way for you to gain more than lose. And so we're going to get right into it, I'm sure.
Yes, I love that so much. We are so excited. This is Dawn's first episode on HR at the Table, and we're elated to have her here. Now, before we jump in and start kind of with the questions and the interviews, we've got some questions for our audience today, just to really kick things off. So, first poll question we've got here: have you experienced conflict in the last 30 days? Let's just get an idea of where everyone's been sitting the last 30 days, and don't worry, we're kind of on to something here, but just want to gauge our audience where you all are at with conflict. So, have you experienced conflict in the last 30 days? And then we'll share the results, and then we've got one more question before we really jump into it. All right, we've got 70% have voted, so we'll give it just a few more seconds. All right. All right, we're sitting at 75. I'm gonna close this and share real quick. Here we go. We've got 85% saying yes, they've experienced conflict in the last 30 days. Dawn, I'm curious, are you shocked by these results?
Absolutely not. That's the beautiful thing is that conflict is the one thing that each of us face at some point of our 24 hours. You know, it's crazy because it can be as little as I woke up 30 minutes later and I'm not sure if I'm going to make it to work on time. Like here in Tennessee, we have 5.5 inches of snow, so we're literally stuck. And so that's a form of conflict. You know, what did I wear? What am I going to wear today? You know, and maybe the dog doesn't want to go outside and that slows you up. And
Yep.
then you get to work and this coworker doesn't have their report ready. You have a meeting in 30 minutes. So conflict is the one thing that we all experience as humans every single day in positive and negative ways. So we're gonna dig into it, Liv, because there are a lot of misconceptions that I want us to jump into.
I love it. I love it. And we've got one more question just to gauge where everyone. So that last question was personal. Have you experienced conflict? I would have been a yes also. So now we want to know, is conflict resolution a part of your organization's people management strategy? Do you spend the time to focus on conflict resolution, whether it's training or education? Um, Embedding that into your organization's values. Curious what our audience is thinking here. And Dawn, to kind of put you on the spot, do you have an idea? Do you think majority do, or probably not, or not sure?
Well, if the audience is like the rest of the universe when it comes to conflict resolution, only 35% of organizations even make it a part of their strategy and their professional development plan. So if we're hovering around 35, we're typical.
Okay, let's take a look here. Looks like a little bit higher. So we're at 45% do. So that's awesome. But then we've got 41% no, or they don't think so, and then 14% aren't sure. So very interesting results. And
Yes.
I think everyone's here for the right reasons. So this will be a great conversation.
Definitely. And that's good to see that we're up to 45%. That means my work is not in vain.
Yes.
I literally have a quest to get 1 million people trained as peace builders in 2024. So this is part of it. So the more you share the information we're having here today, the better it will be for all of us as a community, because once we do this well, we've normalized humanity, and then that way we can live free and liberated as our own true authentic selves. That is my goal. That's my life goal, Liv.
I love that. And I want to dive into that a bit more. And So let's jump into what's typically seen as this forbidden C word, right? Conflict. Um, Dawn, before we jump fully in, why do they call you the conflict chick, or where did that kind of come from?
Oh my goodness, Liv. So look, I did not choose conflict. Conflict chose me. So after spending over 35 years in corporate America, which also included 14 years as an adjunct professor, 12 years in the nonprofit sector, and an 8-time entrepreneur where I sold 3 of my businesses, conflict chose me. And so the big C word is a lot of people view it as something that's negative, but a lot of times it comes to 2 things. And I call this my P and P. It's someone's position and the power associated with their position. And a
Mm,
lot of times it gets confused in a workplace real fast. And
yeah.
so we're going to talk a little later, Liv, about ways that we can address some of these differences, because the thing about power and position is each and every one of us has it and we can leverage it for the greater good. But sometimes people don't know what to do with it, or they assume too much of it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Absolutely. And is that, your the P and P, do you think that's why so many people think of conflict in a negative light or avoid it, or what are some of the top reasons you've seen?
Yes, very good point. A lot of people view it as the forbidden C word is because they're not comfortable with it.
Mm,
With only 35 or 45% of us even knowing what it means, when we ask straight and direct questions, a lot of times it puts people on the defensive. So then we have to get into, I call it a 4 block. In fact, there is a deck, a training deck that is going to be your leave behind that actually goes into those 4 buckets. So it's really about how you communicate as a person, your community, your position, your leadership, and then your performance. And so these four features of who you are as a person shows up in a workplace, and sometimes people just don't know what to do with you, Liv. So they're like, oh my gosh, this person is so X. And so conflict for them becomes negative because it's uncomfortable. And so the association is to go ahead and make it a bad thing because I don't know what it is.
mm,
Whereas in actuality, conflict is neutral. It is neither positive or negative until you put your response to that stimuli. So it
mm.
gets into human development. It is social psychology. So for me, I'll give you an example, Liv. Do you like deadlines?
Depends, but yeah.
See, conflict. And for Dawn, I love deadlines because if you don't give me a deadline, I'm conflicted because I don't think you're serious. And
Mm,
so you look at how that can be a deadline can be a horrible thing for someone who is deadline adverse, right? And so they
right.
see you as the mean person, you're the worst boss in ever. And that's where the forbidden seat comes into play because you'll get the eye rolls and the paper slants and showing up to the meetings late when it may just be a person who is driven by tactical things, meaning I want to get something done. So the task is that important, and you live maybe more of a relationship person where you'd rather have our relationship intact and I want to know that we relationally are going to be okay. And if
Mm,
I've put a deadline or a barrier between us, like time or some paperwork or maybe even this webinar, if I put that in place too fast and it's not something you want, you will immediately, your body will respond in a negative way. It's like, I really don't like the way this feels. And so
yeah.
that's how conflict has gotten a bad name. And that's why I centered it in my work. My very first contract was a government contract. And it was because people were not aligned. It was a generational conflict. It
Mm,
was a person who had brought a person into an organization, had been their mentor, and now the mentee says they are the master or the master teacher. And so they were trying to get the person out of the organization, right? And
yeah.
so that was my very first dealing with the C word. So
Yeah.
the boomer, he was a boomer, so well into his 50s, early 60s, and then I had a gentleman who was a millennial, late 20s who was like, okay, I'm ready, pops, get out of the way. And so that's how conflict ends up with a very negative connotation, because a lot of times we've associated with a value that we have or belief that we carry that may
Hmm.
not be aligned with what the other person's even sending your way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's wonderful. When I say I love the science behind conflict, it is a beautiful thing. And
Yeah.
you'll get the notes. You'll get the notes. You'll see it.
I love it. And for our audience, we do have that handout attached. So in your GoToWebinar control panel, there should be a little handout section, and you can download that, what Dawn was referring to. But I don't want it to take away from here and now. So you can definitely download it and, um, digest it later as well. So Dawn, before we kind of start talking about seeing conflict in a healthy or healthier mindset and our perception on conflict, have there been any trends you've seen in the last few years when it comes to conflict or conflict resolution or management?
Yes, there are a lot of trends I want to talk about, and I want to break them down. So everything that I'm sharing today with you, Liv, everything is evidence based, okay? So we
Okay.
take everything from social psychology all the way over to true APA, the psychological folks, then over to branding and marketing, and then entrepreneurship. So we have the gamut. So if there's ever anything that anyone on this call wants, on this webinar wants to know, I have the white papers. Just hit me up, okay? So let's talk about some of the trends that I have seen, the ones I really want to address. So since 2020, we've had a change since the pandemic. And so what we have noticed is there's a shift in the way conflict resolution is being handled at work, okay? So in 2019, listen to this fact, in 2019, 60% of our remote employees spent their work week in intact, meaning on campus or on site.
Hmm.
Now in 2023, that's fallen to 20%.
Hmm.
So when you think about a hybrid, so that includes hybrid and remote work 100%. So
Right.
what that has done, we have 4 generations in the workplace working right now, actively working. How do you think they feel about these changes? What we see are the trends with the older generations, the Gen Xers, the Boomers, and there are very few veterans still left, but they're retiring. But what we have found is that they connect with people by seeing them physically there. So there's this physical attachment. But when you get over into the late Gen X, the millennial, and the zillennial generations, they are attached by technology. So we move from connectedness to connectivity. Connectivity is the technology connection, which is all they need for the most part. Whereas
Yeah.
connectedness is that physical. And so that has impacted our well being. So employees are 4 times more likely to be engaged at work and when they're physically in the location at their work location. So how do we balance this? So what we
Yeah.
also found in the world trend, 64% of organizations now. I will tell you, Gallup is one of my favorite entities, research entities. I used it when I was at in the consumer packaged goods industry when I worked for Nabisco. Shout out to the Nabisco brand team. But Gallup collects so much data down on a granular level that really helps us understand. So 64% of employees have been given extra job responsibilities since the pandemic. 51 of them cited restructuring of their teams as problematic. So we have the employee satisfaction going up, yes, because we have an influx of new workers who are younger and more agile and wanting this particular hybrid or remote space. But then we also have restructuring in a way that hasn't allowed us to really, really talk about the real change. The
Yeah.
changes aren't just people, they're processes, they're
Right.
policies, it's technology itself. So 42% of them have said budget cuts have impacted them. So while employee satisfaction is going up, employee stress is as well because of those 3 things. So those are some things that we really got to tap into, because I want to share this one fact with you right here. When we look at the bigger picture, and I know the majority of our audience today is US and North America bound, but if we talk globally, do we realize that a disengaged employee represents $8.8 trillion? Did you hear me say trillion? Of untapped productivity. So you know what that means? It costs us money not to address conflict.
Yeah.
It costs us money not to really look at the well-being. So yes, they're happy, but they're also more stressed. So that direct correlation with that trajectory is not anything that's going to be good for us. Because what we also found is 1 in 5 employees and US adults in the US live with a mental illness. The pandemic impacted that even more over these last 4 years. And workplace stress has been reported to cause over 120,000 deaths in the U.S. each year. So I'm just going to leave you with those. I have way more stats, Liv. I love this stuff, but those are a few of the things that are really impacting the way we show up and the way we must begin to really truly understand that conflict resolution has to be part of your total strategy. Because if not, what we have is those disengaged employees. And you know what they also say? One more, 59% of people are looking for a job at all times, even when they are engaged.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when people hire me, Liv, they're hiring me to keep people in the building because people are sliding out the side door.
Yeah.
They're sending DMs, and they talked about quiet quitting. Quiet quitting that's the number one way people are firing themselves. They'll send a message and say, "I'm out. I'm over here with this company now." Yeah, they give you that much. And so it's really time for us to embrace conflict as an opportunity to gain information, build that connectivity and that connectedness that's required for us as humans to stay whole.
Right. Yeah, Dawn, I love the data points that you shared. Again, like I said, I'll be rewatching this later, but the fact that, you connected conflict with employee engagement and performance and retention, right? I think that's why we're here, and so many of our audience is here today to address something that's not often talked about. So I am so excited to continue this. I want to start talking about how do we adjust our mindset and our perception of conflict so it is healthy and it is proactive, and everyone can be excited to talk about conflicts like you are, right? So real quick, let's talk about leaders. We've got a lot of leaders joining this call today. So how can a leader's mindset around conflict, what kind of influence does that have on team dynamics or team success or even company success?
Absolutely. That's an excellent question, Liv, because you have the ability to drive the entire culture of your team and your organization. So I have this whole concept in this training around the power of one. One individual can make a significant impact. And so a lot of times it starts with our mindsets, and our mindsets have to be set around more of a growth mindset as opposed to a fixed mindset. And so a fixed mindset is using the scarcity model that is so prevalent in a lot of sectors. I know, like in education, the nonprofit sector, and then some sectors of corporate, where if we're not doing anything, or if we're not growing a certain way, then we're losing, and then become super paranoid, right? So the healthy mindset starts with you. So the first step in that is to, one, take a self-assessment. And again, I'm going to use my favorite team, Gallup. Gallup has what's called, they have the ownership and rights of strengths finders. I want to encourage you, a tip for you, if you are a leader on here right now, do this for yourself and then go do it for your team. Give everyone the Strength Finders assessment. That is a $9.99 seat. That's a cost. So make that investment in yourself and others to at least get your top 5 strengths. And what that does is it allows you to see how you show up. And across these verticals, are you an influencer? Are you a strategy person or a strategic thinker? Are you a relationship person? And or are you somewhere in between, right? Where I'm a relationship, I'm woo. I mean, like woo is one of these, winning others over. That's an influencing trait. And so when you think about these 4 things, how do I show up? Oh, Dawn is this, and this. So my top 5 speaks specifically to who I am and how I show up. And so then you take that Strength Finders assessment and you say, Dawn, what is it about your values and your beliefs? So you'll create a list of non-negotiables. These are things I absolutely cannot deal with, right? All right, for yourself and in the workplace. So once you've made that, what does my belief system tell me? Here's the things that I value, right? So doing a core value assessment in your own life. I value family. I value freedom. I value choice. I value creativity, right? So all of my kids are very different. We're all unicorns. We love it. Crazy. Most people will think we were crazy, but again, we're gifted and we allow each other to be free in our homes, right? Now, in someone else's home live, you may value straight structure. Everyone's in bed at 10 o'clock, lights out, lights down. We eat chicken and rice on Tuesdays, beef and filet mignon on Thursday, whatever. So again, taking those 2 things, that's part of the self-assessment. And you'll see this in the presentation. The self-assessment is where we start because your core is going to tell you a lot about yourself, which brings me into the DEI space, diversity, equity, inclusion. I do conflict resolution, but guess what that involves? DEI as well, because a lot of times we're afraid of even that term. But diversity is 28 elements, 28 different things that make me different. Where we were born, how we were raised, my identity, my gifts, my ideologies, where I'm regionally located, have I moved around, my age, my kids, birth order, all these things, family. What's family for me, right? And so those things are what we call part of your nucleus or your core. And then what's outside of that is your span of influence or your community. And so it's really about taking that mindset and saying, how is my core impacting my entire environment? So who's in the environment? Coworkers, friends, uh, neighbors, right? If you have any associations, all of those people. And so we're bringing parts of ourselves into these spaces and not really understanding that your core or somebody is putting a thread in you every single day. And you are also issuing threads. So if you think about a quilt, which is pretty popular in my culture and in where I'm from, in my identity, we built family quilts. And so there are patches of life that you leave everywhere. And so all those patches grow up and become quilts. And so sometimes people are stitching things into your life that are fine as frog hair or as thick as coarse barbed wire. So then you have to decide, who am I? What am I willing to do and be? Who am I becoming? So that's the journey of what we call the healthy mindset. Who am I becoming? Who do I want to be? Because the dashes is what's going to make a difference in your life. And like I tell people are like, oh, she's old, she should be. Don't let anyone's perception of you define you. Only you can define you, right? And so that's where the healthy mindset starts. So as long as you as leaders are willing and open to be present and to understand, look, these are my biases. I don't like people who don't give me the reports. Anyone who has worked with me in the history of the 22 companies, 6 colleges, 8 businesses know when you come to Dawn, Dawn wants the information. So guess what, Liv? I sometimes get a little reputation as being a hard person to work with or work for, but it's because of the excellence. But it goes back to my strengths, execution, strategy. I am low on relationship, believe it or not, because I'm all about, hey, Liv, we got to get through this time. Like the presentation, you'll see it. The handout, you're thinking you're getting the handout, you're getting a slide deck with like 38 slides. Overachiever, always have been, perfectionist. So that's the mindset. But with that mindset, the perception is I may be one way. So these intentional conversations that we need to have with each other and ourselves helps people just kind of dismantle the negativity associated with conflict. Because the more you know about me and my story, you will get to know, oh, she just likes to work hard. So let me just get this report, or just tell Dawn you can't do it. I'll go do it myself. Right? I won't
Hmm.
hold no foul, no harm. I'm like, good. If you can't do it, let me go get it. Right? And so that's the piece that we need to really understand in conflict. A lot of times our conflict comes from our perceptions, not the reality of who we are and who other people are.
Yeah.
That's it.
I love that. And I love the emphasis on that self-awareness first.
Mhm.
Again, we've
Yes,
got a lot
sir.
of leaders here. And I guess my follow-up question, I know we'll dive into this a bit more, but
Mhm.
have you found any, I know you mentioned like Clifton Strength Finders and things like that, but is there are there resources or tools or easy processes for our leaders here to facilitate this change in perception for their teams, right? Or other leaders? Like, how do you encourage others to view conflict as, as beautiful as it is in relationship building?
Yes, yes. A very good question. So there are a lot of tools, and I will tell you, there are a lot of free tools. If you want the free version of the Gallup, it's called High Five, and it will give you anecdotal data that tells you the exact same types of things and kind of how you show up. You have Myers Briggs. There are free versions of the Myers Briggs that get you into those 16 personality types. There's also a conflict resolution. Assessment. Those are free. They're PDFs where schools, universities, and companies and consultants like me have created versions out there to allow you to adapt it in your workplace. So for you as a leader who's looking to say, how can I do this? I want you to remember you always have the power of one. If you start with yourself and you do a true assessment and say, hey, I'm this way, my biases are here, my non-negotiables are here, I really need to work on one thing. And so the thing is, one thing you want to work on this year. And if you can work on one thing, then the rest of the universe starts opening up and things start happening. Because when you're vulnerable and authentic, people can then say, okay, Dawn's not really good at a relationship. Here's how she can help, right? I've also created a community, especially for leaders of color around the world who are interested in learning things that they don't necessarily want to ask their boss about. It's called Lifted Network, lifted.network. Come join the party because there you can gain insight into the things that tripped us up. Like the founders of the three of us have 90 years of combined work experience. That is crazy.
Hmm.
When you think about it, that is crazy. But think about how much knowledge is out there. And the thing is, we want you to have it for free. So you have lived experiences and you have resources that are out there. So I'm going to say what I tell my children: Google it. We're Googleologists. And so just find your way and just be willing to be the power of one. Your
Yeah.
one voice can change. On every team, regardless of what culture I've been in, live, my team knows that I roll for them. I will enter an order and I will go and fight for their money. But again, that's who I am. And so, they go, oh, Dawn drives a hard bucket. I'm like, yeah, I do. So even in my last role as a nonprofit executive, I literally asked for each of my employees to get their raise before that was accept the offer. Literally,
Hmm.
literally. Mid-cycle. They're like, oh, she coming like this. And so, that's a form of conflict. People don't like to talk about it, but like I had to learn. So another part of healthy mindsets and perceptions, get a mentor. I really enjoy mentor relationships, whether you're in a group or if you have a coach. A mentor helps you more in a one-on-one to be like, Liv, here's some things that I think we could work on together. Here's some things I see. Here's some experiences that I've had, and I'd like to pass this on. Now, coach will tell you this is how you do that one thing. So if you
Yeah.
say, hey, I really need to be better about networking and relationships, go and find you a coach that is a beast when it comes to networking. And the beauty about connectivity in these days is that it can be a virtual person. I literally go on LinkedIn every week and connect with someone I do not know around the world, right? It works because those perceptions become things that are manageable, because you'll find that we have more in common than we have different. And it also neutralizes conflict, because we're always thinking it's something bad or something different. It's just something you don't know yet.
Right. Yeah. And going back to your point earlier, it's uncomfortable because we haven't taken the time to really navigate it and understand how it can be used to benefit one another and relationships. So I love that.
Yes.
And Dawn, I'll say the chat is just blowing up with
Oh, it said yay!
so
Well, we have to have time for questions and answers.
yeah, I do want to there's one question here from Lori on what models of conflict resolution do you recommend or have found to be effective? And I know we're going to dig into a little bit on, essential skills for managing conflict in teams, but any response kind of right off the bat?
Yes, there is a tool. Look, I was looking for my book. I pulled it out. But there is a book. I'm going to find the name of it right here. There's a book called Conflict Resolution Tools. And Furlong is the author, Furlong. So I'll make sure we get that and add that into the chat. But it gives you 8 different models to use when it comes to conflict. And so when I was talking to you about the P and the P, it's power and position. That's just my take on it, because I've been doing this since 2010 officially as a business. And so those skills for mastery come around learning the tools that are there and then adapting them, Laura, into your environment. So one of them is this thing called triangulation. And all of us have experienced it. If any of you are parents or siblings, you know what I'm talking about. So triangulation looks like this, right? We have a person who is what they call them, a persecutor, a victim, and then we have a mediator, or someone who is going to be the savior, right? So triangulation occurs when there is conflict between 2 people and they pull a third person in to their side. So then that way, that can begin the gaslighting we're so used to. That can begin all the force of anger and angst across the room, because it's about power and position. I want you, Liv, to believe what I'm saying because they did this to me. And in this particular toolbook, he talks to you about how to neutralize that triangle and make it a power one, where you bring the 2 parties together and they come up with what is called their BATNA, their best alternative to a negotiated agreement. And what it is they talk about their interests and the things that they want, right? So that's at INP. So we're talking about a PIP.
Yeah.
And so what's my interest? I really want to go outside in the snow, like my son's trying to negotiate the snow today. Okay, 6 inches, no gloves, not happening, right? Mama already knows it. I don't have to pull anyone in. It's not going to happen. But in a workplace, we have the same type of things. They'll say, oh, you're asking for a report. That report, we don't need that report. It's too much information. Our data is skewed, blah, blah, blah. And so they may go and pull another employee in. Well, the person who's pulled in gets to sit in a position of power and allow the 2 to have conversations. And so the way that we introduce conflict resolution to the space is by asking questions. And we use a funnel approach to the questions. So in your environment, the first question I want you to ask is, why are we here? Right? What brings us to this space? Like, why are you bringing me into this? That's the top of your funnel. And then you say, what is it that I need to know? So these are all very open-ended questions. Okay? And the phrase, now you can use this personally and professionally. So I'm about to save some marriages out here. Help me to understand. You start the question with that. When there's a point or a position that or an interest that they have that may seem a little odd to you, or something that you need clarity around, help me to understand, Liv, why it's important for us to have this meeting on Thursday, right? Just like that. And the thing is, have notes. I keep notebooks all day. Keep notebooks, write down what you hear. Because when people are in war, what we call verbal war,
Hmm.
um, and there's a conflict continuum that we can talk about. The best thing to keep them in the green zone, if you think about a stoplight, to keep them on go is to make sure they are talking about the issues, talking about their issues, talking about their position, their interests, and then also talking about the play. So the play is something that they want. And conflict is just a scarcity of resources, mindsets, past rivalries, and personalities, period. So once you know that and you're asking questions, you're pulling them through the funnel. And so when you get all the information at the top of the funnel, then once you get down to the bottom, what are my alternatives? What are the options? What would you like to see? These are just basic questions that you're taking notes to.
Right.
And then you ask before you close live, if this doesn't happen, so you're basically asking them, if this doesn't happen, what would be the alternative? Or what would you like to see? If you can't get the $10,000 raise, what would you like to see? So
Hmm.
you don't give them a number. You open it up because the best alternative to a negotiated agreement, it might be, I just want recognition for the work that I've done. I want to watch, a gift card, and a space on the newsletter for next month. So
Hmm.
see what happens a lot of times when we get into a distributive model, meaning we're just going to go tit for tat or dollar to dollar, that is not the optimal solution. And so a lot of times if you let people talk their way through it, they will say, it's really not the money, it's really not the report. I just want to be valued. I just want to be respected.
Right.
Right? And then you can go and say, well, hey, how about we go and talk to Jim about this? Let's see what we can do together. Jim, would you be willing to listen to her part? Liv has something she'd like to share. Would that be okay with you?
Hmm.
And then you sit down and be quiet and just watch them work it out. That's the way
Yeah.
it works, Liv. I know it seems so simple, but a lot of people just aren't used to doing it and
Yeah.
really don't know the skills for mastery to make it happen. But it's
Right.
questions, the power of questions.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's that, that fear of handling that conversation
Mhm.
incorrectly or saying the wrong
Yeah.
thing. But I mean, I'm sure it takes time and it takes practice and
Yes.
humility is kind of the word I'm
Yes.
thinking of.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's in the deck as well. We talk
Yeah.
about when things go wrong, apologize. When you are wrong, just say, you know what? My bad.
Mm.
Okay. And just be willing to move through it. And you know what's funny, Liv, within the DEI space, why there's so much angst around that is
Mm.
because so many people have it wrong because they don't know the questions to ask. So the thing is to elevate and move almost into a student position, say, help me to understand why it's important for us to hire this or to do this or to think
Yeah.
this way or to incorporate this. And a lot of times it is us learning and teaching in real time. And
Right.
that's where you get the true value and you're able to hone your craft. You got to be willing to do it and
Yeah.
mess up.
Yeah, I love it. And the questions are coming in the chat. So I'm gonna kind of combine one because I'm
Okay.
watching the clock and we could probably go
We
on
could be
forever.
here all day. I tell you, I
Right?
love it.
Yes, I'll just say for those of you, we do have a survey at the end of the webinar. If you have enjoyed this or love the insight Dawn is providing, please let us know because
Yeah.
we'll have Dawn back for sure.
And I
Um,
will answer all questions too, Liv. So if somebody submits questions, I'm telling you now, send them to me and I will answer them. If people need one-on-ones, you can hit me up on my socials. I answer my own things because we do have bots. Hi, AI.
I love it. So Dawn, one of the questions we have here is how to get buy-in from a boss or other leaders that maybe don't seem interested in conflict resolution. And I'm going to combine that question. Mary, thanks for submitting that. I'm going to combine that also with how do we how do we create a culture that embraces, conflict, right? So
Yeah.
I'm gonna toss that in your court, but
Okay.
curious what your thoughts are there.
Yes. And so, yes, we go back to the power of one. You as one person can make a major change. And I am living proof. One person can make a major change. with one other person. So Liv and I can make an incredible impact. So this very question and thing did come up in one of the companies I used to work for when I was a chief impact and diversity officer in the nonprofit sector, responsible for raising the voices of marginalized communities of people in the city of Nashville, Tennessee. Was given $100,000 in addition to my regular job to do this work. And we were told it was only going to be 17, maybe 25, 29, 30 people max. That community is now over 900 people, over 650 organizations. And under my leadership, we distributed over $2 million of, get this, state funding. Never been done. Okay. The community is 85% Black. The other are diaspora, Native, Asian Pacific Islander, blind, deaf, hard of hearing, veteran. You get where I'm going?
Yeah.
Every continent was represented in this space. And we also have allies there as well. And these are white-led organizations that have missions for people, all the social determinants of health of major cities, right? So to be able to do that level of work, it takes a lot of intentionality. So you as a leader have the ability to influence the immediate people in your what I call your direct line and your upline. Okay. So to get that visibility, you start with you. You go ahead and start making those choices for yourself and start bringing in project-based things that you can do. So say there's a project on the team, you can do that. I can take this project and I can lead it. Maybe there's an initiative around a book club. You can start with a book club. I have a client that started with a book club. They have created an entire committee to address all the issues of every type and identity of their employees from here on out. They'd never had it. And when I go back to that client, I talked to the leadership. It was 8. It was an all white organization, right? And they're like, Dawn, we have no idea what our organization was doing before now. We are so grateful, right? And to hear that person use that power to the executive, like they're like, no, we're not doing that. We're actually going to do such and such. And the executive goes, oh, okay, that sounds good. So what I'm going to tell you is lead with your own receipts first. So you do your work and then you start working your team. Find one, just find one other person, and then the two of you implement something that's great and needed. It can start, and I'm gonna tell you how I started. Ask for 10 minutes in the staff meeting to cover one thing that's culture driven. Okay. It's stealth mode, baby. Stealth mode. Because I would work on culture in every organization I've been in since I was 19 years old. I always say, can I get 10 minutes on the agenda to share an article, to share an exercise? So I became that person. Now, there are a few people like, oh, she gimmicky. She's brown. She's trying to get up here and get all the. No, I'm trying to make the people around us better. And so a lot of it starts with awareness. Okay. And once you've done that, go into your community, which is going to be part of that 4 block. You'll see it in the deck. Go into your community, sign up. There are 3 levels of what I call allyship, and I got an allyship checklist. I didn't give it to you, Leah, but I'll make sure you get it. But allyship comes at it's different. So I have levels. So level 1 is write a letter, vote, encourage someone else to vote. Level 2 is go in as a organization rep, so I can be a board member, or I can participate in an event. I can volunteer. That's a level 2 engagement. Level 3 is what I call, that's the co-conspirator. I'm in here writing policy and helping you as an agency do the work that you do. So like I work for, my jam is women who are currently and formerly incarcerated. I am now working on that globally. So I have a client in Zambia in Africa who has a chicken farm. So we're building entrepreneurs of the women who are coming out from jail. They're working at the street level, making sure they're matched, and I'm the one helping them on the strategy and the grant side, making sure they're aligned for the funds to help them grow. And next, we're going to take it to another country and another country and another country. So that's how you do it. It's just very slow and be consistent, because consistency is the key. All right. Consistency is the key. We can't do anything when you're just you know, scrolling through. You got to chase the algorithm every day. Do something towards your goal. So
Right.
figure out what your okay, Liv. You know what? We may have to do this again because there's a whole piece of this, and if anybody wants it, I do have it. I have a booklet. I have ebooks. I'm nuts. I do this. That's my brain.
Love
Okay,
it. Love it.
ADHD works for me because I'm up and I'm writing everything out. So there is a book where I'm talking about connecting to your joy
Mm,
and your core values. So you do core values, you do a mission statement for yourself and a vision statement for yourself, and you begin to align and move toward that work. So that's the best way to influence other people. And what happens is people are going to want to be in part of your committee or want to listen to your 10-minute spiel in the staff meeting, and then projects are going to start coming your way. Now, I'm telling you what I have done since the age of 19. I will be 51 tomorrow. It works. It stands still.
yeah.
Hands down, we get stuff done by aligning ourselves and being consistent in our work. All
Mm,
right. So if anybody else needs a tangible plan, I got a book for that. I got a
love it.
workbook. I'll send it to you because you were here.
Love
Oh
it.
yeah.
Yeah. And
Yes.
we've got some interested individuals in the chat, so we'll connect. And Dawn also has her contact information, her
Oh
LinkedIn
yeah.
available too. So we've got
Yes.
all that, and we've got a lot of individuals saying happy early birthday. So happy early birthday, Dawn.
Yes. I told, look, I'm a Gen Xer, but I say I'm a Gen Xer with Z tendencies. So they say, how you doing? I say, I'm XC.
I love that. I love that.
They're crazy. But that's
Oh,
the way we're going to work. We have to work intergenerational to get this entire world where we need to be. So
yeah,
we're in a good place.
great. So, Dawn, I want to get to your shirt and talk about
Yes.
boundaries. Before we do that, we have some questions on technology and
Mhm.
tools and all that. So I'm going to go ahead. I want to hear while I launch this poll question. I'd love to hear if there's tools or solutions, or back to the resources discussion, what has worked for you in the past.
Mhm.
But for our audience, we do launch this poll question every HR at the table. So we collect data. I know today we're talking about conflict and embracing it, but this poll question does feed into our annual talent acquisition technology guide. That's 60, 70 pages. It's a
Mhm.
hefty guide. We'll just say that. So while our audience is engaging with this, Dawn, I'm just curious, when we talk
Mhm.
about boundaries, when we talk about people and conflict, any tools that come to mind, or is it more of a process, or relationship driven thing that we need to focus on?
Ooh, that's a very good question. Of course, they're all great questions. But the one thing is, I had to learn this. So I am, here's what I say, do your work first. I am a self proclaimed people pleaser who is also a perfectionist. I know no one knew that, huh? No one, I'm sure. And so I have worked literally on myself critically for
Mm,
over 30 years, right? And what I have found is in that process, you have to take care of yourself. So self care is the thing you need to work on and prioritize.
yeah.
Because what happens when you hold boundaries and not grudges, you
Mm,
get sick. So I'm gonna give you a real life example. Okay, see this right here. I
yeah.
have a compression sleeve because I had a mini stroke.
Mm,
And that was 2 years ago.
mm,
It was stress related. So I could have been, one of those people that died. In fact, two of my friends did die. So there were three of us, brilliant people. The one's a poet laureate and all this side of New York. She died. I
mm,
didn't. And then our other friend, he died. So I lost the two of them and I just was hospitalized because I did not allow myself time to breathe, to stop. So
mm,
between the pandemic, COVID-19 Delta variant, and my work that was all over, life was lifing, I'm going to encourage you. The first step for you as part of your self-discovery is to really look at how you manage your time for yourself. And so prioritizing your self-care. There's also another, here it goes, Gallup tool that I would recommend. It's called the Q12. I think I have it here. Let's see what it's called. Yes. So they ask questions. This is part of the Gallup's engagement survey. They'll call it G12. You'll see it. You can just Google. But they ask questions like this. How satisfied? They're just 12 questions. And they say most of the questions that people ask in their surveys about their employees don't even match. And so these here, based on the millions of people over the years that we've talked about around employee engagement and employee satisfaction, as well as health and other metrics around wholeness, how satisfied are you at the company and the place that you work? Do you know what's expected? So this is a Likert scale. I know what is expected of me at work. A lot of times people are stressed out because they don't know what's expected. That was me. I was doing so much and required to do so much, and being that perfectionist and that people pleaser that I literally ran my tank down, went into the reserves, grabbed all the oxygen out of the car, and I was hospitalized for 4 days.
Mm.
And so I don't want anyone to do that, because the funny part is the number one killer of working adults after health related adults is workplace. Workplace. Okay. We don't need that. So we're not talking cancer and all that stuff. We know that's number one. But right behind that is something that we have control over. So they'll ask you, I have an opportunity to do what is best every day. In the last 7 days, I've received recognition or praise for my work. So I want to make sure that you go and look that up. So if you put a little note right now, those of you who are taking notes, go and look up Gallup's engagement survey. There are 12 questions. Answering those questions can change your life and also change your trajectory. Because if I don't hold boundaries, see, I wasn't holding boundaries at work. I wasn't holding boundaries personally as well. So my kids are 6 to 21. Ask some questions. Okay, yeah. I had my son at 44. So I went from only taking a multivitamin to 2 years later taking 5 pills, and now having some comorbidities that could take me out. So if you're not willing to prioritize your health, it can become a big problem. The first person I remember, I worked at Dell, he had a heart attack at 31. I was 35 at the time. And so the thing is, the light bulb didn't go off, Liv. I was like, it was almost like I was a workhorse. Like, oh, okay, well, that was him. Ooh, let me shake that off. Let me keep going. And what I didn't realize is that was my note. That was the precursor, right? So I want to encourage all of you, the best skill of mastering conflict is to date yourself. Take 1 day out of every 30 days just for you to do something you want. And out of your 24 hours, dedicate 1 hour to yourself. Every day. I'll schedule naps. In fact, I'll be taking a nap after this call.
I love that. I love it. But Dawn, that is like such invaluable, like priceless insight that no matter how many times we hear it, I think it's so good to be reminded. And going back to a lot of leaders on the call today, your team's watching, other leaders are watching, and how you navigate. So I appreciate that, Dawn. And I know we're at time. I wish we could keep going. I don't want to get in between you and your nap and everyone's meetings that I'm sure they might have. But I do want to make sure everyone, that QR code will go to Dawn's LinkedIn so you can get connected with her. We've got her website, theconflictchick.com, on there. So please feel free to take a screenshot or a picture. And then we also have Verified First. We host HR at the Table. We are a pre-employment screening organization. And then 15.5, just a reminder that they're today's sponsor, and we are thankful for their sponsorship of today's HR at the Table, especially as performance and engagement management solution. So with that, Dawn, I just want to say thank you. It was such
Yeah, and just bring us in. They can always bring me in, Liv. They can always bring me in to have the conversations with the team. That's how it happens, one conversation at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. And we might have to have you back. I think we definitely need to have you back. So
Let's schedule it.
yeah. And then everyone that's looking for SHRM and HRCI credit, the codes are here. Feel free to take a screenshot or a picture real quick. And then if you can just stay, just give us 30 seconds. We've got 4 or 5 questions in this little post-webinar survey. Let us know what you thought. Let us know topics you want discussed on HR at the Table. Let us know if you love Dawn or you want to send a happy birthday message, all of that. Or if you want additional information about Verified First or 15.5, you can do so there too. So again, thank you everyone. Here's to season 4 of HR at the Table. We'll see you all next month.
Thank you all. Enjoy. Be good to yourself and others. Take that time. Thanks so much, Liv, and your team. Amazing.
Bye.
Bye-bye.